모스워크탭 전세계에 계신 와디 신발장 구독자 여러분 안녕하십니까, 와디입니다. 제가 오늘 여러분들께 굉장히 예쁜 신발을 하나 소개해드릴까 합니다. 이 신발은 2003년도 3월 1일에 발매한 신발인데요, 덩크 SB 라인이 만들어지면서 초창기에 발매했던 제품입니다. 바로 바이슨이라는 제품이에요. 굉장히 많은 분들이 아시겠지만 그 당시에 바이슨은 덩크 SB 중에서도 끝판왕이었습니다. 당시에는 은색 박스로 이렇게 덩크의 SB 라인이 발매가 됐었고요. 일단은 사이즈 탭은 이런 식으로 진행이 되어 있다는 걸 여러분 확인하실 수 있겠습니다. 뒤에 인터뷰가 준비되어 있기 때문에 좀 빠른 진행하겠습니다. 바로 이 제품이 덩크 SB 바이슨 제품입니다. 이 제품 같은 경우에는 당시에 처음으로 혓바닥까지 전체 다 스웨이드 재질로 이루어져서 굉장히 인기가 많았고, 요 빨간색과 갈색의 요런 배합이 너무 예뻐서 많은 스니커 매니아들에게 사랑을 받았던 당시의 덩크 대장 덩크라고 보시면 되겠습니다. 검소리, 아웃소리 이렇게 들어가 있고요. 자, 저 같은 경우는 이 제품을 너무나 갖고 싶어서 수소문 하다가, 광고 아닙니다, 저가 돈 주고 샀어요. 오사카 멀티샵이라고 하는 네이버카페. 왜 제가 이 얘기를 하느냐, 이 주인장님이 너무 친절하셔. 그래가지고 저를 이걸 사진을 몇 개를 보여주시고 하면서 요거를 저희 집까지 배송을 해 주셨습니다. 그래가지고 이게 극미중고예요. 극미중고인데 오사카 멀티샵 분께서 중고라서 그런지 모르겠어요, 굉장히 좋은 가격으로 저는 이거를 70만원 정도 주고 구매를 했습니다. 지금 스타렉스에서는 한 1000불에서 1500불 사이 정도의 거래가 되고 있는 걸로 알고 있습니다. 그래서 저는 오사카 멀티샵에서 구매를 했고, 여러분들 굉장히 일본에서 구할 수 있는 구제나 빈티지를 잘 구해주시는 것 같더라고요. 그래서 홍보를 제가 해드리고자 합니다. 저에게 가장 추억의 신발인 바이슨을 정말 좋은 가격으로 구해주셨으니까요. 그래서 제가 이 사진을 빡빡빡 찍어가지고 인스타그램에 올렸더니 왁티에서 전화가 왔습니다. 왁티에 제가 아는 형이 일하고 계시거든요. 와디야, 너 바이슨 좋아해? 그래서 좋아하죠. 그랬더니 너 마커스 알아? 마커스요? 그 혹시 나이키 SB 만드신 그 마커스 세이야 말씀하시는 겁니까? 그거 우리 왁티 일본 지사장님이죠. 에? 와, 진짜 왁티가 뭐냐면 여러분, 요 골스튜디오 있잖아요. 그래서 오늘 또 맞춰 입었습니다. 이 골스튜디오를 진행하고 있는 회사 이름이 왁티예요. 한국의 브랜드인데 일본에 지사가 있대요. 그래서 일본의 지사장님이 마커스님이라는 거예요. 와, 레알? 그랬더니 너 통화 한번 할래? 내가 주선해줄게. 이래가지고 통화를 했습니다. 바이슨과 이 덩크 SB 모든 히스토리에 대해서 제가 질문을 열심히 준비했고요. 여러분들 지금부터 그 인터뷰 한번 감상하고 오시죠. Hello?
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, clearly. It's very nice to meet you, and I'm really honored to talk with you.
Oh, thank you.
So please introduce
Okay.
yourself to Korean sneaker fans.
Hello, Korean sneaker fans. My name is Marcus Tayui. I am the managing director of 왁티측 Japan, a wholly owned subsidiary of a company headquartered in Seoul, Korea, 왁티 Inc. More relevant to this conversation, I presume, is that I am a former Nike employee, and I had a part in Nike skateboarding.
That's a big part.
It is I mean, of course, there's a predecessor to that. I was initially a Nike Japan employee. In the Japan organization, on the outset, right out of college, I was working as what they called a business analyst, which is essentially a monkey that makes reports for various divisions. And my primary focus initially was to make reports for Nike Japan's forecasting division. From there, I became a product manager within the Nike Japan organization.
Okay.
And from there, a lot of the collabs and some of the stuff that gets brought up in the sneaker world was developed. And then from there, in 2001, just before the official outward launch of Nike skateboarding, I moved to Oregon to be a part of that category.
Oh, so interesting. So, how did you start your journey in Nike, and why did you quit?
Okay. Well, on the starters, like I had mentioned, I was out of college looking for a job. I was actually right out of college. I joined another company.
Okay.
They brought me to Japan, and while I was here in Japan, I met up with the folks at Nike Japan,
Okay.
who in turn made a position for me.
Uh-huh.
And it worked out to where I went to university in the U.S.,
Oh.
so I graduated in June.
Mm-hmm.
So my peers, people of my age, were graduating because the Japanese schooling system is a little bit different. They were graduating in April
Yeah, true.
or March, starting working in April.
Mm.
And so with that April freshman class,
Mhm.
I essentially joined Nike Japan as a peer to those new recruits.
Okay. So you was born and raised in the U.S.?
More specifically, California.
Okay. So, what did you do after Nike before Wakti? After Nike before Wakti. So everybody was wondering that where you were.
Sure. Yeah, I did fall off of the map for a while.
Uh-huh.
I still consider myself off the map, if you will.
Uh-huh.
So I worked at Nike. I was in Beaverton till 2006.
Uh-huh.
And then from 2007, I essentially, took a couple years off.
Mm-hmm.
Right about in 2008 and 9 period, I was working for a couple of Japanese trading houses and licensing houses.
Okay.
And really, going to trade shows in the U.S. on their behalf, brokering agreements with, distribution rights in Japan for American manufacturers, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2010, for family reasons, I moved back to Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at that time I met up with the good people at Puma Japan.
Puma, okay.
Really former Nike employees,
Okay.
to be quite frank. And those former Nike employees that I was familiar with were now managing the the Puma Japan organization.
Mm-hmm.
And through that, I joined Puma in 2011, mid-year, just after the earthquake and nuclear fallout.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was with the Puma organization until summer of 2016, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And for the Puma group, I was doing what they considered the lifestyle brand management, I think is what the official title was.
Mm-hmm.
And, primarily looking out for the footwear and apparel lifestyle business unit of the company.
Mm.
And then in 2017, I joined Major League Baseball Japan as their licensing director.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that for a couple of years before I met the good people at 왁티.
Uh-huh.
And in summer of 19, essentially last year, I've been working with the 왁티 guys.
Okay, got it. So finally we're on the call. 왁티 just made us.
Sure, yes.
Yeah. Thanks for 왁티. And let's get back to 2001. We just Nike SB is so huge at this moment, and just want to know that how did you start it, Nike SB project?
Well, Nike SB started, the founder, Sandy Bodenbecker, RIP. He was, the originator. And through, people that worked in the region, I was introduced to Sandy and what he was trying to do. And they brought me over in the role of the product line manager. I was in Tokyo at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so Sandy brought me over to Oregon to do the product line management for this new category, skateboarding.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, with, footwear development in Nike and its DNA and doing what it does, of course, he wanted to come out with really, really technical performance skateboarding shoes. But in the meanwhile, there was this big retro sneaker boom essentially happening.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that was rooted back in Japan. So we were taking some of the hints and the direction from that and applying it to SB until those performance shoes came on.
Okay. So, you made all the strategy by your own, or you had a team?
Nike skateboarding was, we were all a team. I think originally there were 4 or 5 of us.
Uh-huh.
We had a product capabilities. We had, essentially, Sandy knew everybody at Nike, and he had, access to the top. And so we were, in a nice way, in that corporate environment, just really left alone to do our thing. I think business-wise, we were probably on the radar more than we knew. But, it was just really about doing it the right way. You know, here was Nike, this giant corporate entity, entering a anti-corporate, anti-establishment domain of skateboarding. I mean, at that time, it was really, you know, I remember there being ads saying, you know, don't do it. And so, you know, we were really cautious and really committed to doing it right. And so I think that, you know, that initial direction set forth by Sandy and the team at large is kind of the precursor to its current success.
Okay, right. At that time, I remember that Fujiwara Hiroshi was wearing dunks when he skates at that time. So, was it influenced you to choose dunks as a main theme of Nike SB brand?
Hiroshi-san has a huge fingerprint on the Nike, the whole lifestyle footwear business that Nike has, you know, established really in the late 90s all the way through now, essentially. But at the time, if my memory serves me correctly, you know, even in the late 98, 99 era, there was a lot of Nike dunks and retro Nike sneakers being parallel imported into the country.
Okay.
And sold. So I remember, you know, at times as a new kid at Nike Japan, and when the Americans would come over, just because I spoke English, I was often, you know, tasked to take these guys on market tours and whatnot. I remember a lot of my colleagues from headquarters from Beaverton were super surprised to find how many Nikes they were in the market that weren't coming from Nike Japan. And so in that, you know, parallel importing domain, if you will, I think that's really where the dunk frenzy really initiated. Now from there, and again, I just don't recall the sequences. You know, this was like 20 plus years ago. But I was introduced to Hiroshi-san via a magazine editor. His name is Kishi-san.
Okay.
Kishi-san was a writer at a streetwear magazine, publishing a magazine called Boom. And Boom was kind of the Bible of sneakers of the time.
Okay.
Now you have to remember, at that time when I joined Nike, I wasn't into sneakers. You know, literally at all. My IQ was 0. And so, fortunately, between a lot of employees at Nike Japan that were really into sneakers, and then through this guy, Kishi-san, who was the one who introduced me to Hiroshi-san, and then, you know, through Hiroshi-san, you know, everybody else who's relevant in the streetwear domain in Japan, you know, that's kind of how I kind of learned. So, insofar as the craze of the dunks and where it initially originated, I'm going to have to attribute it to the parallel importers that were bringing those products from the U.S. So obviously when they're bringing in the dunks from the U.S., so obviously they were being sold in the U.S., right? And so there was something that was already happening. But I think Japan, the Japanese market, just kind of put two and two together and made it more of an iconic feature of streetwear and you know, more of a fashion, bringing it into the fashion line, if you will.
Right. So what do you feel like people at this moment, people are crazy about dunks and they are like praising Dunk SB. What do you feel?
Right now they are? You know, you see these cycles come and go.
Yeah.
I remember even at that time in the late 90s when I was first getting started, and some of these models, of course, these are all shoes that I had never even heard of. You know, growing up in, you know, the suburbs of California and whatnot, you know, the only places that I really saw sneakers were at sporting goods stores. And so I remember, you know, some of my colleagues at Nike Japan that were really into sneakers were like, you know, showing me all these products and retro products. And again, there's this guy, that editor, Kishi-san, who at the time for me knew more about Nike than Nike knew about Nike. And so he was, you know, really giving me the lesson on, you know, what was popular, what's going to come back, etc., etc.
Okay.
And, you know, again, that whole retro boom was right at that time. And so there's, you know, those booms and those trends, I guess, they come and they go. You know, it's repetitive. So, and it's nice to hear that it's back now. But yeah, at that time, I was really just taking my cues from the likes of Kishi-san and, you know, a lot of other players, of course.
Okay. And I heard that you also you also invented, I mean, can I say invented or not, but you're related with the CO.JP project.
Sure. I'm gonna say again. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to take credit for that.
Okay.
There was a lot of players and a lot of people that were, helping me along the way.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, CO.JP was the extension of Nike's website, Nike Japan's website at the time, and just taking the play off of that and saying Concepts Japan.
Uh-huh.
The way I remember it, honestly, is that I just needed a means of keeping my products organized. Again, I was managing a product line. And, the whole sneakers and the fashion side of it, there was a whole category. I want to say it was called, maybe branded sportswear or something to that, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a category that was dedicated to re-releasing retro Nikes in the light of fashion.
Okay.
All the while, there's a couple guys in headquarters and guys out in New York that had this whole LE line. I don't know if you remember that, limited edition line. Even Nike Japan at that time, not so much for fashion, but the Japan organization also had a product, not a creation center, but they had product development capabilities to directly work with factories to develop what we used to call SMUs for Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So we would, make SMUs via the Japan organization. We would be importing some of the branded categories, fashion footwear. We also had, our own submissions back to headquarters for collabs or Japan exclusive colors and whatnot.
Uh-huh.
And so to keep all those organized, we kind of made this name, CO.JP, and we'd tag everything CO.JP, so we knew that it was products briefed and developed in Japan.
Right. What is that true that the origin name of CO.JP was a CT attack and it changed because of the terror?
Yeah, I saw that somewhere as well, but I don't recall that at all.
Okay.
So the 9/11 was what, 2001?
2001.
Right?
Uh-huh.
And so I want to say this was because I moved to Oregon in 2001.
Uh-huh.
So the whole city attack and some of the things, so the whole city attack, the way I remember it, was essentially some of the cues that we were doing in Japan, the CO.JP.
Uh-huh.
And then, took on other names there and after, but, we wanted to kind of broaden it globally.
Mm.
And so we take a familiar concept of what we were trying to establish in Japan and then installing that in, the big cities of the world, that being London, New York, of course, LA. I think later on Shanghai as well.
Mm.
And I'm sorry, I can't forget Paris.
Mm.
And some of the bigger cities that had these streetwear shops and really nice presentations of our product.
Uh-huh.
And just trying to organize that and making sure that we weren't all over the place, and some of that was pollinating one another so that, we can, drive some global energy, if you will.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And so, again, though, insofar as like CO.JP, and I remember another development term we used to use, quick strike, to make, shoes faster, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess our logic at the time is that we wanted to stay on trends. So we needed to have tighter timelines so we could meet those trends in time.
Mm.
And then, and the whole sequence and what was called what and who made up the name and all, I don't remember.
Okay, got it. And but you remember, you might remember the main designer of CO.JP.
Yeah, I mean, insofar as a lot of the CO.JP products, whether they were called collabs or not, more times than not, I'm not the most creative guy in the world, but more times than not, they were, whether they were retailers or, Hiroshi-san himself, and or a lot of people that Hiroshi-san introduced the company to, they would, literally send me CADs. I would just turn around and either have, the headquarters develop them and sample them. And once we got the samples and whatnot, we would put a marketing, kit behind it, make X amount of pairs, and, have a tight distribution. And it was trying to, I guess, create that hype, if you will. And so a lot of the product creation itself was not actually me.
Okay.
I was just like the coordinator between the creator or the idea conceptor and it actually being made.
Okay. So as a Korean sneakerhead standpoint, we really want to have that kind of special line in Korea, like let's say CO.KR or something like that. As a one sneaker mania in Korea, what should we do? Like, do we have to call Nike, or like Nike has to hire one Korean designer, or what should we do?
Well, as I remember it, back in the early 2000s, there's a lot of Korean designers. The Korean design talent pool is quite good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so there are a handful of Korean designers, whether they're Korean Americans and or Koreans from Korea. So I mean, really, you'd have to ask Nike. But insofar as the way it developed at the time, I think Japan. The reason why CO.JP and some of the things happened in Japan was that because it was just the timing, and there was already this established parallel importing market, and that parallel importing of Nike and parallel importing of Levi's, those parallel importers, bringing stuff over from overseas and selling them in these boutique type shops, select shops. I mean, it's kind of like the origins of Tokyo streetwear, right?
Oh yeah.
And so as that streetwear scene and Harajuku was becoming more and more globalized,
yeah, true.
Fashion fans from around the world would gather. It just made sense at the time to do these special projects for Nike in Tokyo. So more than anything, I think it's just a question of timing and where fashion trends are.
Okay.
And then on the Korean side of it, I'm not really that familiar with the market, so I really can't say. But a lot of it is that whole what we coined as the influencer, right? And the influencer and how much reach that they have. I mean, at that time, like Japan or Tokyo at least was like really, globally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was a hot city. And with Seoul, it's been hot. Recently it is now. I mean, this whole BTS and the whole Parasite thing, of course.
True,
right?
true.
And so, honestly, for me, if you ask me here and today, I just think it's a question of time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Got it. So this call was started from a normal posting of a Dunk Bison, and I just want to know the history of the design of Bison, Heineken, Supreme, Tiffany, and Pigeon, and everything you did at that time. Can you tell me history about all those dunks from Bison?
Sure. So Bison, it's when Kyoan first told me about the Bison story, it just made me chuckle and recollect because, at the time, again, a lot of the colorways and a lot of the concepts weren't, technically mine, if you will. But, I was a product line manager, so I was trying to fill a line, and of course we'd have, distribution specific to regions, specific to countries and whatnot. So, we needed a handful of products to fill those. And sometimes, you just are kind of reaching, if you will. But insofar as the Bison dunk goes, I think for those that are in the know, we more times than not refer to it as the Homare dunk. And I don't know if it's appropriate to speak this story, but Homare is my dog.
Oh, yeah, really?
So I had just gotten a chocolate lab in 2002 when I first moved to Oregon. And I made a lot of stuff that was inspired by my dog.
Oh.
From t-shirts. So the Homare dunk is one of that series, the Homare series. We also made Nike FCs, which was also an SB soccer, a futsal shoe inspired skate shoe. And I remember doing Homare FCs, home and away colors, and everything else we could think of. That was
got it. I just I can see your profile picture. Is that dog or
that is Homare.
Got it. What is the red color then?
So the red is just the collar. That I had this one collar that I always, put on her, and so her collar and her leash was red. I got kind of embarrassed.
And that became a legend.
Like, who is this guy? But at that time, of course, we knew a lot of people, and we got to work with a lot of creatives, celebrities and musicians, and skate shops and skaters themselves, and even the skaters. They all had their apparel contracts, they all had their deck contracts, and the whole, the skateboarding world is really filled with artists. It really is.
Yeah.
And so we got to work. We had to do essentially. We didn't call them collabs. I guess they are. They're collabs. What they are. So, a lot of the colors by the skaters, the skaters in turn to some of the creatives that they knew that came up with some of those concepts and ideas, the color material design, if you will, the storytelling part of the product. So, again, the idea per se, most of them are not mine. But they were just, from the Nike SB network of creatives that we had to tell, stuff. And then, it's always fun when you get an actual input on Nike product. You start with an Illustrator CAD and you get a sample and you edit it a bit and you perfect it. And then, you're so psyched to have something like that. So, at that time especially, we used to get a ton of requests for essentially what we call collabs here and today. We were fortunate enough to be selected within that.
Okay.
But yeah, so again, a lot of those ones that you mentioned, like again, the one that really kicked things off was the whole pigeon frenzy that happened. I want to say in 2005 maybe. I had met Jeff in Tokyo years before that. And we kept in touch. He would often come to Japan. I would see him, and so yeah, when that whole episode happened, it was an eye opener.
Supreme?
Spring, yeah. So Supreme, I don't recall exactly how I met James, but we did get introduced to Supreme. I want to say maybe via Eddie from Undefeated. Eddie Cruz, maybe. I had been fortunate enough to meet Eddie while he was in Japan for whatever reason. Actually, I'd be willing to bet more than anything that is via Hiroshi-san.
Oh, okay.
And so we met up with James, and Supreme is Supreme, and they were then as well. And then we were in the New York scene. We had New York skaters, Todd Jordan, Danny Suba come to mind, and between having those guys on representing New York in a proper way, Supreme is down to work for Nike, and it all came to be.
Okay, I think similar happens with the Tiffany as well. I mean, Diamond Dunk.
Right. So the Diamond Dunk is right at the tail end. After that, of course, the whole Nike SB, we caught on to like the storytelling, the color stories that we were telling with every Dunk SB essentially has another name to it.
Oh yeah,
right?
true.
Whether it's Pigeon, Tiffany, whatever it may be. And as that became the norm, more and more, between our PR guys, our developers, just the guys that were in and around the skate industry. Would come up with this. So the Tiffany, when I saw it, it was probably one of the last projects I was a part of. But I departed before the release of it, so I don't remember it in the public too much. But yeah, I can't really speak to it too much.
But okay, but the one different thing was like I think it was the first collaboration with Nike with the beer brand Heineken. That's different. I mean, how did it work?
Well, at that time, we the whole licensing and the legal element of it was quite frankly ignored. We really never even considered it. Just, of course, inspired by. I don't think. Well, I'm sure legally we didn't openly come out and say this is the Heineken Dunk and we're working with Heineken because we weren't.
What?
But yeah, we weren't. And then, we made it. We released it. I do recall there being some talk from the legal team insofar as what we did and whatnot. But really, I don't recall anything much coming of it. Similar story with the Paris Dunks. There was that that artist. Bernard Buffet, and without really any rights per se. We took the liberty of printing some of his artwork on our sneakers.
Okay.
I mean, they weren't for sale. Not that it should matter, of course. I think after that, we had a French kid who was managing that project at the time, and he, I think, cleaned it up and made sure that the buffet people were properly filled in after the fact.
Okay.
But yeah, that was pretty messy as well.
Okay. Right. What's so interesting for me, like new informations and like it was like time travel. It brought me back to early 2000, and thanks for all the information and for a kind interview. I think it'll be very happy. I mean, Korean sneaker fans will be very happy with this interview, and they will enjoy. I believe that they will enjoy this contents.
Now, even when some of those re-releases of those products we worked on in the early 2000s, 10 years later re-releasing when they come up, similar to the Bison.
Yeah.
And it's pretty nostalgic for me as well. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, true. So I really want to meet you in person, like when COVID is gone. I just want to visit Tokyo and just really want to meet you in person.
Likewise.
And anything else I want to talk to? You want to tell to Korean sneaker fans? Anything?
Kind of putting me on the spot. I don't know. It's just, it's really entertainment, if you will. And I think Nike's a great company, and their design and their innovations and all the things that make their fashion element so cool is that, in fact, they are a authentic performance company, bettering sports as we know it. And I think that core value is something that we, as consumers, all appreciate. And I hope the Korean fans can see, of course they understand and of course have an affinity for the brand for that particular reason. And so, enjoy, have at it, and I look forward to seeing you.
You come to Korea often?
Well, I should, but, of course with COVID, some of my plans this year at least have been postponed. But, when things, normalize, they ever do, and travel becomes easier, then for sure.
All right. Thank you very much for everything, and it was very nice time for me. Talking with
likewise. It was reminiscent, and again, I look forward to seeing you in real life.
Cool. Thank you very much. Do you have your Instagram that I can show to Korean people?
Actually, I'm just a voyeur. I don't really post anything.
Okay.
And so I don't really have one.
Okay, got it. Anyway, thank you very much, Marcus. It was really fun.
It's good talking to you, man.
Yeah, thank you very much. See you soon.
네, 저 개인적으로는 너무나 영광스러운 인터뷰였고 개인적으로는 너무 즐거운 이야기였습니다. 마커스님 한국에 오시건 일본에 제가 가건 한번 뵀으면 좋겠고요. 정말 이런 올드 덩크에 대한 여러분들 추억을 갖고 계신 분들이 굉장히 많을 건데 조금 깊을 수도 있지만 어떤 그런 비하인드 스토리를 들을 수 있었어서 정말 좋은 시간이었던 것 같습니다. 여러분, 이런 바이슨 덩크, 티파니 덩크, 피존 덩크, 스투시 덩크 다 있지만 저는 정말 좋아하는 덩크를 갖게 되어서 너무 기쁘고, 여러분들도 본인만의 어떤 옛날에 내가 이 신발 좋아했는데 저 신발 좋아했는데 하면서 그런 신발들 하나씩 컬렉하는 것도 꿈 중에 하나가 되시기를 바라겠습니다. 저는 다음에 더 재밌는 신발 이야기로 돌아올게요. 여러분, 안녕히 계세요.